Yes, welcome everyone to this AgTech online exchange. This time we'll have Farmz2U with us for our first AgTech exchange of this year. And today we have Aisha Rahim, founder of Farmz2U, and John Gichuru, Business Development Officer at Farmz2U. So without further ado, I would like to pass the mic to John and Aisha, who will be presenting and sharing the screen now.
Okay, we can go now. Thank you, Aisha, for that. Just maybe to bring in, just again to repeat myself, Farmz2U is an AgTech company, and our goal started with a dream of one lady. Her name is Aisha Rahim, who is in this meeting, with the interest or the focus being to change how the agri-system has been in Africa. I know everyone knows that one of the biggest challenges we have, and especially when it comes to the food security, is because we have a broken food system on agricultural value chain system. So Farmz2U has been formed or has always found the basis of our operations in building an operational engine for growers, suppliers, and buyers. And when we talk of building the operational engine, is to ensure that, number one, we are able to meet that challenge of the food security that have been there prevalently for as many years as we can, by embracing and leveraging on technology to ensure that we have that engine that is operational for the growers, suppliers, and buyers, who are the key players within the value chain. Just to bring into concept of what we talk of the growers. When we're looking at the grower and specifically in the African concept, a grower for us is somebody who is directly involved in farming, the smallholder farmer for this matter, as well as those people or organizations who we are calling aggregators, who also couple up as growers as well as aggregators or collectors of this farm produce. And these people, you'll usually find that whenever we have these farmer organizations are the people who have influence within a society or a cluster. And when we now talk of the suppliers, now we're looking at anyone who supplies or supports the production process or the farming process. They can be, number one, the lenders, provision of capital. Number two, input providers, providing the materials, the raw materials required in the production process. Number three, insurance providers, people who are providing insurance services to these smallholder farmers or the growers for this matter. And then the other step or the other stage that we have in the production cycle or the value chain is the buyer side. So from the production side, we've looked at the growers and the suppliers, and the supply side, we're looking at the buyers. So to Farmz2U, when we talk of the buyers, we're looking at FMCGs, manufacturers, or people who use the farm produce as raw materials for their production. We can go to the next slide if it's okay. Yes, so to bring again into concept what we are trying to solve and what we've been solving, we can all agree that Africa's broken agricultural supply chain definitely brings up very main growth opportunities. And that's where I've said our company or our institution derives our goal and our interest. Number one is the insufficient capital. When you talk of the insufficient capital, if you go right now to a farmer or smallholder farmer or a farmer organization, one of the key things they'll tell you is that they're not able to raise the enough capital to be able to support their farming activities. Even if, number two, they have the opportunities, they have the capacity, the land to do farming, they do not have a very structured way of getting the capital to support their farming processes. That's where now we have come up and looked at, when we have talked of the operational engine, what we are doing is that we are trying to link these farmers to the lenders of these, or to the lenders and providers of these finance or capital to ensure that they are able to carry out their farming activities. What we know is that definitely, especially when it comes to the financial sector, our lenders have had a very hard time cracking this issue or the agricultural sectors when it comes to financing. Because number one, it's very hard to understand the profile or even to come up with a farmer profile before you are able to advance a credit. Why? These are people who, the nature of farming is cyclical. So it's very hard for a financial institution. Their goal or their job doesn't really entail to go and understand the nitty-gritties of how a farmer does. Their interest is always just to lend and be able to get back. But when you look at how those institutions that have done that, most of the time you'll get that the default rates are always in the excess of probably 70% and above. Why? They don't really understand, they don't really have that much experience to understand really what happens in the agricultural value chain and what really a farmer profile is all about when you're financing them. The other step or the other challenge we're talking about is the lengthy delivery cycle. When you're talking of the lengthy delivery cycle, we're looking at how long it takes to get farm produce to number one, a supplier or a buyer for our case. An FMCG, an example I'll use is maybe let's look at somebody like Nestle. When they want to get their produce of maybe maize, before they are able to aggregate or before they are even able to come up with a structure of how they are going to source for their maize, it takes a lot of time because they do not really have that much exposure in terms of being able directly to work with farmer organizations or even farmers to be specific. Our opportunity, this is what we are talking about, ensuring that we are creating that operational engine whereby we are able to connect all these key players to ensure that the delivery cycle or the delivery period is reduced and matched to what a buyer expects. So what we are using and leveraging on is technology to ensure that we have data of what is in process in terms of production from the farmer side. We are able to feed that data to our buyers. Our buyers have access, or they're able to get real-time data of what farmers or a group of farmers or farmer organizations are currently producing in terms of capacities, in terms of other, product specifications, and that ensures number one, operational efficiency is ensured. Number three, we are talking of the unfulfilled payment obligations. Again, that's a very big challenge, and especially to our farmers and farmer organizations. When you look at how things have been working, this agricultural value chain has, for the longest, been dominated by what we usually call the brokers, people who do not have regulation and whose interests are personal. So you'll find that most of the time they'll just go end up exploiting the producer, who is in this case a farmer, a smallholder farmer, or even a farmer organization. Our job is to ensure that we are breaking that, or we are coming up to ensure that we are bringing up a very transparent, open, and very verifiable and sustainable system that ensures that when a farmer has provided, or when a farmer has supplied these produce, they are able to get value out of what they have been producing. So the unfulfilled payment obligations have already been taken care of. Number four, we've talked about the unpredictable production output. For the last few decades, we've been talking of climate change. We've been talking of how best we need to implement and work with new strategies in order to take care of the effects of the aftermath of climate change. So the unpredictable production outputs, we are using, like I said, number one, technological advancements to ensure that we advise our farmers what best they need to produce, in what capacities, what are the best inputs or what are the best inputs they need to work on, what are the best example even seedlings that they use they can use to plant in their areas, which matches the number one location, which will also be able to give them the maximum output. So generally, in a nutshell, our opportunities in terms of insufficient capital is linking the farmer to the right people, sources of funds. They do not know that that exists. In terms of the lengthy delivery cycles, we are looking at ensuring that the operational engine we are talking about links directly a farmer or the producer and the grower for this matter with the end user who is the buyer for this matter. And they have that real data kind of a setup where they are able to plan their production, and a buyer is able to plan for the manufacturing or the sourcing, needs in advance using live data. In terms of unfulfilled payment obligations, like I've said again, we are able to make sure that we are do not, and the farmer is not exploited within the chain by unscrupulous middlemen who have, for the longest, been, taking advantage of these farmers. And finally, the unpredictable production output, like I've said, using data to advise and give our farmers what is the best and the most sustainable farming practices that they can work with. Thank you very much. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, so from all that I've just explained in terms of the challenges and the opportunities that Farmz2U have already identified and we are capitalizing on, we are acting as a conduit between the growers, the suppliers, and the buyers. If you'd agree with me, we've already identified those are the key players within the value chain, and those are the people who, for the longest, have always had a kind of a gap or a kind of a broken form of link to ensure that we are able to get sustainable productions. Next slide. How are we doing this? Farmz2U have identified three key pillars that we have been working with to ensure that we are able to actualize the idea of becoming an operational engine or a conduit between the growers, the suppliers, and the buyers. So for context, number one pillar is the improving lending to growers. Improving lending to growers, our interest and what we've already been doing is by ensuring that the lenders, for this matter being financial institutions, get data about farmers. We have the information, we have a platform, we have an outreach of farmers as well as farmer organizations who we provide this information to the lenders so that they are able to now advance credit. The biggest advantage that comes with it, we are actually giving them, or we are actually doing something we are calling the enhanced due diligence. Like I said, initially, the challenge has been with the lenders getting the right profile of farmers to lend to. But now, as Farmz2U, because our experience, our outreach, and our job is to work with these smallholder farmers, we have already established the farmer profiles. We have the right information that we now share with our lenders or the lenders in the market to be able to make the lending decision. So we have provided, number one, a functionality of the enhanced due diligence, which is a very important thing. It's actually always the initial thing that a lender will always do before they can make a decision to lend. The other point that you're doing is the monitoring and evaluation, which we'll discuss later. We are able to ensure that, like I've said, the conduit doesn't just end by giving or recommending a farmer to a lender. We are working with this farmer or this grower from the point of production all the way to the point of, harvest and even delivery or supplies to the buyers. Out of that now, this brings up the second pillar that we are working on, which is the enabling of frictionless transaction with suppliers. When we talk of lending to the growers, we are lending so that we can be able to support and empower the growers to carry out their farming activities. But now, how do we implement this? The monitoring and evaluation bit that I've just touched on, and we'll talk about later, comes in it when we talk of enabling the frictionless transaction with suppliers. Most of the time you'll find that our suppliers, and for the matter of context, when we talk of suppliers within the value chain, we are talking of the lenders, we are talking of the input providers, we are talking of insurance, we are talking of agronomists or agricultural experts. So when we come into the context, what we do is the frictionless transactions we're talking about is we have a platform whereby our farmers or our growers can be able to source their farm inputs directly through our platform that is mirrored within our platform, who we are able to recommend what our, based on the data and the recommendations of what they need to produce. When we give them, when we advise them that, yes, as an example of a farmer in Kirinyaga, in Nairobi, in Kenya, if we recommend that for you to do a maize of 5 acres, you'll need this kind of capital, we proceed again to give them further insights of how best they need to apply that capital. And when we give them the insights of how they need to apply the capital in farming, we are linking them to the people who are going to support that application. Like I've said, the lenders, getting them the funds, the input providers, ensuring that we can be able to give the farmers an opportunity to get the right inputs in terms of seedlings, in terms of fertilizers, in terms of pesticides, from accredited and approved suppliers. Number 3, in terms of insurance as well. I think when it comes insurance, most of the smallholder farmers as well as farm organizations in Africa, to be general, they do not really have that much info of something like crop insurance. Farmz2U has come up and partnered with farm insurance companies who are tailoring insurance products just for the smallholder farmers and growers to ensure that even the risk of farming has already been covered and has already been taken care of. So when we've already supported, the production or the farming, that leads now to the third pillar that Farmz2U is working on, automating procurement for buyers. When we talk of automating procurement for buyers, we'll just go back again to the two pillars that I've talked about. Number one, ensuring that we get capital for farming. When we've done that, ensuring that those farmers are able to apply that capital in the right channels, in the right way. When they've done that, what happens is that they've already now finished with their farming. What happens after the farming? It's now ensuring that the produce has been delivered or has been sourced and given or supplied to the right buyers, who in this case are our FMCGs, as well as our manufacturing companies. How we are doing that is through automation. Initially or traditionally, what we know that most of the companies do is that they will build, silos or storage, storage areas. They will buy, the raw materials in bulk without a very much well-defined, procurement process because of the uncertainties that do exist. So Farmz2U has already come up with a platform whereby, I'll still use an example of Nestle. Nestle can do their forecasting of their procurement needs in months or even within specific timelines. How they do that? Number one is that we have already established the profiles of our farmers. We know the production capacities. We can estimate and come up with, analytics or details of data of how much a farmer group or farmers or even a region is able to produce. And we are able to, give our buyers that platform so that they can be able now to be sourcing from us, automatically, or they can be able to source from the producers or growers for this matter, automatically without necessarily having to, go to the ground, which has traditionally been the case. So ideally, if you look at those three key pillars, that's what we've been talking of, providing an end-to-end support system, which is the operational engine I'm talking about. Thank you very much for your questions. Maybe we could finish on all these presentations so that Aisha and I can go through the questions together, if that's okay with you. Okay. How are we supporting the key stakeholders across the value chain? Like I've said, the key stakeholders within the value chain are the growers, supporting their farm operations, that is increasing the growers' success in farm production with precision agriculture. We've already ensured that we have the right info and data that we supply or we give to these growers so that they can apply in their farms. When we talk of the land as a very key player in the value chain, that we are connecting them to the suppliers of capital, to quality borrower leads. So Farmz2U is more or less of acting like an agent to the lenders, giving them the quality borrowers, which has not been the case in the previous, era or in the previous years. So the lenders sales definitely are going to be optimized. So, and then number three, we are talking of the suppliers. When we talk of the suppliers, like I've said, they are given an access to a farmer network. Our networks, both in Nigeria and Kenya, this farmer network or database of farmers and farmer grower organizations that we're working with are given to our suppliers so that they can also be able to, spread their info, or they can be able to market their product to farmer organizations or even smallholder farmers in specific. So we are connecting high quality farm input definitely to providers, high farm input providers to a network of high quality farmers. Number four, now the buyers on the supplier side. We are talking of supporting buyers in sourcing raw material or raw agricultural produce in a timely manner. Like I've said, we've already automated that agricultural value chain process in a platform that ensures we already have and we have info that can be used by buyers to automate their procurement needs. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. Just to give you a bit of maybe of an intro of how we do this. So as a farmer, when you come to a platform, Farmz2U, when you want to do farming, There's the planning stage, which is always the initial stage. You can select a country. It will give you either an option of Kenya or Nigeria. And of course, I believe with partners like you, we are definitely going to scale larger and even reach out to even bigger masses in Africa. So a farmer from an example of a country in Kenya will be able to come select the country, and they give the platform is able to give them an option of the specific county for Kenya specifically, because we have counties where they want to do, or they are doing their farming activities. And from there, the next step is that they are able to input the key, um, information, the basic know your customer, the KYCs, like what do you want to farm? Example, maize. What acreage do you have? Maybe 5 acres. How much capital do you have at the moment that you'd want to farm? Maybe they'll say, let's just use for matter of an example again, Kenya shillings 10,000. Our system will automatically show you whether you qualify. So for this screenshot that I'm showing you is for a farmer who wanted to do rice. If you look at the second screenshot, where it says like looks like you do not have enough capital, it's for a farmer who want to do rice. The specific variety of rice is Oriza Sativa, but they need 370,000 Nigerian naira for each acre of land. So what the next step that the system will do is it tells you to apply for capital. So when you do that, when you click on apply for capital, the platform or the system will automatically now give you to the next step, which by now internally will be able to now get your info, the KYC documentation. And like I've said, because we already understand the farmer profiles, we will be able now to come up with a plan of how much this farmer requires, and then recommend this data or this detail to a lender. We will give them options because we are working with several lenders. We are not just looking at a specific lender. We will recommend this data to the financial or the lenders within that locality or who meet that farmer profile. Then the next thing is that now the lender, because has already been fed with the right info, it's easy for them now to make a lending decision. The next step after the lending decision has been made is that now the monitoring and evaluation bit that I was talking about comes in. The farmer is not given funds directly. We want to ensure that we are giving the lender the comfort of ensuring that the monitoring and evaluation or the applicability of these funds is done in the right way. And that is where mirroring of these funds is done in our platform. Example, for a farmer who's been given about, let's talk maybe of 370,000 Nigerian naira that we're talking about, is that he or she can only be able to redeem these funds using farm inputs that have already been listed in our platform. So we now go a step further, talk to the input providers, list their products within our platform. So when a farmer wants to redeem the cash that has been approved by a lender, they'll just come select, maybe example, seedlings of 100,000, fertilizers of 200,000, pesticides of X amount of money. So, which is it's an added advantage, like I've said, in terms of ensuring that we are able to confirm that the applicability of the funds is done in the right way. And this has been the decision to lend and even to give or to redeem in those figures is based on data and research that we've already identified for this farmer in the specific region that they are farming, and for the specific crop that they are farming. Maybe you can go to the next slide, Aisha. So when we talk to the lender, when I've talked about all this drives the focus for our company into two key goals or key products that we are currently working on. Product number one is what we call the digital lending platform or product. Like I've said, when we look at the needs for financing, we are a sales optimization partner for agricultural lenders. So we have a product that we call the DLP, or the digital lending platform. The digital lending platform, what it does is that we act as an agent, as a sales agent for lenders by recommending the right farmers, quality farmers, who will be able to apply the funds in the right way and be able also to pay back the funds that they've been given. So we are focusing on increasing the business efficiencies for these lenders. And definitely, why then would the African lenders avoid working with somebody like that? Because they know that it's one, helping them in terms of growing their sales. Two, it's also helping them in risk mitigation because somebody has brought in an enhanced due diligence aspect to ensure that they are getting the right info about the borrowers. Number three is that the loan book definitely grows. Okay, thank you. Yes, we can go to the next slide in terms of strategic sourcing partner, which is our second product in the ERP side, the enterprise resource platform, which is now becoming a strategic sourcing partner for our buyers. This is our ultimate goal. In the long run, we want to ensure that when we are supporting the smallholder farmer or farmer groups, we are linking them to the key players within the value chain, and ultimately the buyers, who are in this case the FMCGs or producers, are able to get or to optimize their sourcing needs. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what we are providing, like I've said, in terms of looking at both sides, it's just a repetition of the same thing. We want to provide lenders with quality leads for lending. We want to provide suppliers with becoming a strategic sourcing partner. And why would feel and we are very confident that our partnership is going to be helpful is because we are number one, empowering the smallholder farmers. Our operational engine is geared towards ensuring that we empower the growers in a sustainable way, and that is by linking them to the right partners at every stage of the value chain. That is both in finance and the market. Number two, inclusivity and networking. In terms of inclusivity and networking, we are looking at ensuring that the list of partners that we're already working with, both from the finance and the supply side or the market side, we are ensuring that we bring them on board, the experience they have, the expertise that they have, we are able to share together so that we can be able to enhance and to grow or to build the farmer organizations in Africa. Thank you very much for your time. And I think I'll pass the baton back to Aisha so that she can go through the questions.
Thanks for that, John. And thank you, everyone, for joining the call. As mentioned earlier, just to speak on some of the project partners we've worked on in the past, some are listed below: the United Nations Development Program, which is the opportunity that got us to expand into Kenya. We work with UNDP Kenya through our digital extension services to farmers, where our platform was used to support youth farmers in peri-urban and rural areas in essentially improving their farming operations. We've also worked with the Nature Conservancy in ensuring that regenerative farmers, we actually focus on the Machakos County in Kenya, and we work with regenerative farmers that were growing broccoli and other vegetables in exporting those products to North American ingredient companies that had sustainability-driven supply chain targets. We've also worked with Wageningen University in developing a digital tool called the Africa Highland Farmer Game. And this allowed, again, driven to youth farmers, test out farming decisions in a virtual world before practicing that in the real world. So these are just some of the project partners we've worked on, and beyond our core commercial business partners, being the lenders, of which we have a number in Nigeria, including Sterling Bank, and our buyers as well. These are the FMCG companies. We also work with project partners, of whom there are a number in the AMEA global group, and that's why we're here as well. Beyond that, we also have investors like Catalyst Fund, that is actually a climate resilience investment fund that again is driving the direction that the business is building. So yeah, that's our presentation to you, and I'll just hand it back to Felipe.
Thank you, Aisha, and thank you, John, for the presentation, and definitely very interesting solutions that you presented. I think I'm going to ask the group to write their questions in the chat if you have any questions to the presenters. But in the meantime, we do have one question from Desta, which is about whether you work with weather information providers.
At this time, we do not. We don't work with the providers directly. What we have done rather is through API integrations, because it's a digital platform that we have. We are able to capture information on weather and use that to drive the farmers' planning activities. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and reshare it in a minute, because I would go to the platform to just show that. But yes, we're not working with any information providers at this time, but what we are doing is building a platform that can easily integrate with such solutions. So it's something that we could explore in the future, but aren't actively building that relationship right now.
Thank you. I hope.
Question as well.
Yeah, I hope this answers the question. And feel free to unmute yourself and elaborate on your question if you'd like. But we do have other questions as well. So one is from Nini Akwete, Desta, yes, please go ahead.
Okay, yes, thank you for the presentation. I want to ask, and which of these banking institutions are you currently working with in Nigeria? And have you also, in any of your engagements in Nigeria, worked on the Village Savings and Loans Association schemes? Maybe you facilitated access to finance on that platform, which is mostly implemented by the NGOs who also supporting access to finance for farmers. Thank you.
Sure. So to answer the first question, who are we working with? We're working with Pivo Africa. It's a microfinance institution. We're also working with Lender, also a microfinance institution. Other institutions we're working with as well, Sterling Bank. These are institutions where we actually have working agreements with. There are a number of others that are in the pipeline. One of the key things that drive the decision of which lending partner we work with is the interest rates they're able to offer, because it's important to ensure that those are affordable. In response to the question on the village partner, I don't know if you're talking about a specific scheme, but I'm not familiar with the scheme you just mentioned.
Yes, the scheme is also an informal way of supporting smallholder farmers to have access to finance. So it's like a savings and loan scheme that most of the cooperative associations engage. They come together and save money together and also loan. And
yeah, so I believe that's more of a conceptual thing as opposed to it's what you're. So that's a conceptual way that farming associations and cooperatives tend to work anyway. We do structure our operations from a commercial perspective, because what we're focusing on is that how do we allow lenders, how do we increase the confidence for lenders to actually deploy capital to borrowers, as opposed to trying to replicate the model that you're referring to. So it's more a case of being able to present borrowers in a format that lenders can understand them with their existing systems. So hopefully that addresses your question.
Well, possibly. I know that a lot of NGOs are using that scheme, and it's also the way forward. Also, is how can that scheme also be mainstream with the commercial institutions, either micro or major big banks, for additional funding, in terms of they're already doing it at their low scale, and they also possibly may not have enough to lend based on the amounts that they have. It's a scheme that possibly, if we're going to work with your organization who will be looking in that direction, aside from this concept that you are bringing, which also is visible and possible to mainstream with our farmers, and they can also look at it and key to it.
Sure.
That may be another discussion for another day.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so perhaps if we connect separately and understand that better. But at the minute, as mentioned, our system is more so designed for commercial finance to flow through to agriculture in a more structured way. I can't see any further questions. I do know we're running out of time, just looking at my clock there. I know that a question was asked a little while ago about our work with weather information. Now, that's not something that is built in right now. So just to actually do a quick review of the screenshots that John showed earlier on the presentation, to allow is, and that's where I'm a farmer in Nigeria. I want to grow rice as an example, and I have 2 acres of land. I have 100,000 naira. We're creating a flow here where directly through the platform, if you don't have enough capital, we calculate the cost of capital based on metrics like cost of seedling, fertilizer. This is designed as working capital, so it doesn't take into account land ownership and things like that. And then allow a farmer to apply for capital. So I've already done a proof of identity and proof of residency on this profile. So that actually, the previous screen would allow me to upload my my ID documents. Things like national identification number in Nigeria is now compulsory to even have a mobile phone. So it's very easy to do due diligence. And this reduces the cost of acquisition of a borrower lead for the lenders. And just again, to put into context, already you can see I have 2 loan applications. This is what we actually refer to the lenders. And beyond this front end, which is the visibility of our growers, on the back end, we actually have a risk modeling score where we go into further details, looking at things like what's the farmer's yield versus the average yield. Are they insured for multi-crop peril insurance and other variables that the lenders typically won't have access to then start scoring the different leads to help them better understand, okay, what is the risk level of this lender? When the lender, when it's identified that the lender is what in terms of the risk level, it's in accordance with the risk tolerance of the lender. This wallet on our platform is then utilized as a tool for flow of capital, where the loan can only be used within this ecosystem. But if I take this a couple of steps back, when I can actually go into my plan and actually see information like, so for instance, I can know when my loan is approved and is being disbursed, but then I can actually also look at my plan and look at best practices for growing rice, using my funds from my wallet to be able to hire a tractor, for instance, and just accessing best practices. So this integration is currently static data. So to answer that question that was asked earlier, one of the key things we're looking at is to start to make this more dynamic, where we're connecting with existing data sets that are powering this in a more automated way. We're working with Mercy Core Sprout program as one of the first levels to doing that. So we're building a system that is very data driven. So even if you're very new to farming, you have no clue how to get started, we even have a data driven tool for the curious farmer, as we call it, to essentially answer a series of questions, and at the end of this questionnaire, they will then be able to see how much they can earn based on the questions that have been answered. So I just wanted to put some more context into how the system works in real time. Interest rate is not driven by us. Again, it's driven by the lenders. We're simply providing a tool. But I'm happy to reconnect with you outside of this, Nene, to provide more insights.
Yeah, thank you, Aisha. Indeed, I think that we have so many questions in the chat, which is all very good. So, and we don't have so much time. So I think I'll have to make some connections. I think that will be great. But I do read a few more questions that I think we still have time to answer, and some of them relate. So I'm going to try to connect them. For example, Helena asks about the reach of your services in terms of service providers, how many service providers you're working with, but also farmers in Nigeria. There is a question about in which states and value chains you are operating in Nigeria. And also one question from Desta about the adoption rates between among the farmers. So how many of the farmers easily adopt the service, and are they paying for the service as well?
So we haven't directly commercialized our model with farmers. Our model is commercialized directly with the lenders and the buyers. However, when the farmer is using our wallets to make transactions, they are charged. So that is an indirect earning model from the farmer, because the farmer is using his or her loan to pay for those transaction fees. But we don't have like a subscription fee or a core fee that is built around the farmer. In terms of the numbers, so we have leads of 30K farmers, but 3,000 of those are active on our platform. That's because the others are on a waiting list. And that's because for us, the platform that we have is very much driven by supplier relationships. We have 3 lenders in Nigeria, which I've mentioned their names, and we have a pipeline of 100,000 USD that is being deployed as loans to these farmers. Now, because we're working with average loan sizes of 1,000, we don't even have sufficient capital to serve the 3,000 farmers on our platform. So one of the key things we're looking to do is continue to build up the supply side in terms of, you know, the lenders we're working with, the buyers we're working with, so that we can be able to provide more services to the farmers. And that's why most of these farmers are kept on waiting lists. With regards to the suppliers, we don't have active acquisition strategies for suppliers. So suppliers of seeds, fertilizer, other things that are being used by farmers in the production process, that is driven by the farmers. So for instance, a farmer receives a digital loan through our platform via one of our lending partners. They are often a source to actually refer to us the input providers they currently use, because one of the key feedback that we got from these farmers is that when they do receive loans, the input sources that they use are often imposed on them, and the quality of seeds can make or break the farming process. So we put more control into the hands of the farmer to drive that process. Adoption rates, I'm not sure entirely in what context that is being referred to, but it's a growing process. We are 18 months into active operations and continuing to take on feedback from the different groups that we're working on. But yes, happy to share more context. I do know that we have 3 more minutes. Thanks for sharing the emails, John. So if you do have any more questions, I'm sure Felipe can also share those. But yeah, I hope I've been able to answer those questions, Desta, as best as I can.
Indeed, thank you, Aisha. There was a very interesting discussion as well. Here, I would just like to tell everyone that we're going to share a summary of these events together with the recording. John has shared their emails on the chat box. Feel free to connect directly to Aisha or John, but I'll also share these later on if you still want more time to reflect upon what you want to talk to them about. Any last burning questions before we close the session? If not, I just want to then thank you again for staying with us until now, and thank you, Aisha and John, for the presentations, and I wish everyone a great weekend soon. So yes, thank you.
Great, thank